John Brown, Chief Exec of the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce, is going to be in conversation with Sebastian Vettel, four-time world champion in Formula One. And he is going here to discuss his environmental action initiative, V5 project. And how? Simply put, you can't be a world champion without a planet. Please welcome them both to the Blue Earth stage.
Cool. Hello. Love that. Innovation, extraordinary, sort of cutting-edge, rebellious nature, and now the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce in front of you, which I know is why you're here. And I brought my driver along today because we believe in we believe in raising people up, giving them a platform to have their voice heard. Thanks for coming along.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
So as I look out onto this sea of, let's face it, frankly, attractive people at Blue Earth Summit, I'm sure you're all wondering, what the fuck are you doing on stage with Sebastian Vettel talking about sustainability, environmental movement, social action? And we've got a bit of a video to play first, haven't we? It's just 15 episodes of Drive to Survive, isn't it? That's what we do.
Yeah.
Let's play this video first.
Let's play it first, yeah. So I asked the question, could you have fun driving a Formula One car, but also make minimal impact to the environment? How could we run an original 92 FW14B at the 2022 British Grand Prix in a fully sustainable way? We left everything as it was and added carbon neutral fuel. We've got an old car from 92, but it runs perfectly. The sound is exactly the same, but yet we do it in a more responsible fashion. We set out a little event and a little challenge. That way I'm trying to pass on some of the experience that I have in go-karting and racing. Like this, but you can also use the whole leg to have more power. You know, celebrate the change, celebrate the positiveness of women being allowed to drive and hopefully becoming a stronger force. I hope you remember, I mean, you're still young and you are growing very fast. I think it's important to remember that it is our world, and usually things that are ours, what do we do with them? We look after them. He stands for so much more. He had compassion. He stood up in his country, was a leading figure, a voice. We had a challenge to invent a hotel for bees in the shape of a race car. So after 1 year we're back at the bee hotel. We can see that it's very busy. We had a closer look with the kids earlier. great to see that the hotel is busy and it's buzzing, so to say. So it's great to see how everything took shape in just 1 year's time. Hopefully we achieved to make a lot of people become aware of biodiversity. Take whatever you get. Got your brushes? The thing already. So you just take the material and just place it in the house. The day comes to an end, and we've had great success, I think, and a lot of fun.
Right, thanks everyone. See you later. Have a fantastic rest of your show. Let's get the next slide on, where apparently it looks like I'm selling timeshare in Marbella to Seb. So why on earth are we here? I mean, this is quite a transition, right? From Formula One to now having a chat with me on. I mean, for me it's a career highlight. For you, I feel like you're going the wrong way. But what are we doing here, Seb? Why are we here? Why are we having this chat?
Well, I don't think it's a step down, and I don't think it should be a surprise. Now, I think what it hovers around is obviously the topic of sustainability. Maybe to give a little bit of background, why do I care? Because you could argue I come from a background in business that doesn't care. We travel the world, we're racing cars just for the sake of, just for the fun of it. So as a sport, I don't think Formula One is known or popular to care too much about the planet. But obviously, we each have our own paths, and I love racing. I loved it when I was a child. I fell in love with it, and obviously was able to play with bigger and bigger toys and work with the best people in the world. But I'm a citizen of this planet or this world just like everyone else, and you can't sort of ignore what's going on in the world. And especially, I think the moment when I had children, and future all of a sudden became something that I could literally grasp and I had in my hands. Whereas before, I think it's fair to say, if you are in your early 20s, mid-20s, future is this thing you know what it means by definition, but you're not affected because it's so far away and you don't worry about it. But then at a later stage in life, without getting too serious, but there's a time when your grandparents are getting old, and so old that they might pass away, might get sick and then pass away. You have your own children, and all of a sudden you are, let's say, exposed to topics that you just were not aware of, and you were maybe a little bit naive. At least for me, it was like that. And then you become more and more aware, and so I had this voice inside growing. On the one hand, I love my sport, and that's was my passion. On the other hand, you become this sort of aware citizen of what's going on, also impossible to ignore. And once you sort of see what's going on, it's impossible to unsee. We're traveling the world, which I think is a great privilege. You get to see so many different sites, meet so many different people. But then you go to Malaysia, and it's humid, and it's the jungle, and the first time you go there, and you see that next to the road, this is where the driver tells you this is where the rainforest starts. And some years after, you come back, and you see there's only one type of tree. And initially, you don't think about it, but then eventually, like I said, afterwards you start to put the pieces together. And I think with that also comes a huge responsibility, being egoistic, looking after my children and wanting to ensure that they have the same possibilities as I had, but also looking out for others. And I think that's where sport can be also a great teacher, because ultimately you want to win, but you want to win and you want to do it in a fair way. You don't want to cheat and just sort of buy first prize and I've got it. It means nothing. So the element of fairness, I think, is still very strong, built inside me, and it's just not fair that, me today, if I put myself at 20 years old today, is a different time than when I was 20 years old, or much further back when you were 20 years old. So that's a little bit the sort of background.
I'm already out of my depth, mate. You don't have to You don't have to dial that up. Do you know what? When we've been having chats and we've been working on a few bits and pieces together and stuff like that, one of the things that I really enjoyed is that it would have been quite easy to do this sort of pitch and switch kind of style, right? Which is F1 driver, completely reformed, now living in a tree house, making his clothes out of his own back hair, all of that sort of stuff. And, almost ignoring your history and sort of start carving a new path. But actually, when we've talked, we've had this fantastic discussion around, there's almost an element of selfishness, which is you want other people to be able to experience what you experience in the future. So you want to make sure that there's racing in the future. You believe that sport is a tremendous way of kind of encapsulating and I guess inspiring other generations. Now, if that goes away, that's a disaster, and you've experienced the privilege which others won't, generations won't. And I guess part of V5 projects is there's a sort of a slight selfish element there as well, right? You want to be able to see racing in the future. You might want your kids to race. I mean, obviously I'm on the path to having an F1 career myself, just because of the stature and the physicality that I bring to the place. But that is part and parcel of your motivation as well, right? You want to see this preserved in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I love the sport. I think it's unfortunately you in the future, but unfortunately not many of you or none of you will have the possibility to experience the cars. I mean, for me, it's the greatest thing I have ever experienced. It's not just thrilling because of the speeds and the forces, but also the competition. And I think you have that element in any sports. But yeah, you want to make sure that young kids, and you see you look at the sparkle in their eye when they grow up and they go karting and they want to be a racing driver, or they want to be whatever in the future. You want to make sure that you still have this sort of same planet around them. And that's where I see a real threat, because the sport that I love obviously is based on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels should end hopefully sooner than later. So what do you do with that? And I think that's a great challenge. But rather than getting to a point where you at some point you just look at the paper and you say, okay, Formula One or racing cancelled because we can't afford to anymore for obvious reasons. I think it's about trying to get innovative and thinking about how you can put it together so that you can do it in the future as well. We saw in the video some examples of the old cars. The idea was not just to drive around and have fun in old Formula One cars, because they're nice and they mean a lot to people that love racing, but it's more to demonstrate and highlight that any sort of dinosaur, you can still sort of walk and race nowadays with a different type of fuel in it. Now, it's not all the answers, but I think in the bigger picture, there's a huge chance for Formula One. There's plans in Formula One, or they have committed in 2026 to switch to synthetic fuels. So that's, I think, a first step. But then if you look at the bigger scale, it's much more responsibility than just how do you make the cars go round. I think it's also how do you host the event, and that's true not just for Formula One races, that's true for any sports event, but any event. How do you move people there? How do you travel? And I think you've got a great sort of lab to experience and experiment, and try different technologies to transfer them, valid ones, onto the roads or any other form of mobility, speaking of racing.
And I think one of the other bits, which we sort of saw a little bit of in the video, is using the platform you have, the platform that F1 has, to shine a light on other work.
I didn't get there yet. But yeah, really the power to inspire. And I think, in all honesty, is something that I wasn't interested in, and two, I completely underestimated. When I was young, I was inspired by, Formula One and the racing drivers, mostly Michael Schumacher. He was my hero, and I had my, posters on the wall and everything. Obviously, later I got into that exact same position as he was for the next generation. Never thought about it that way, and never sort of celebrated myself as in, okay, this is the power that I might have and I might be able to inspire, until, let's say, not recently, but a little bit later in my career. And it's been one of the most empowering experiences that I've made with just, out of curiosity and awareness that I described earlier, little projects that we did, for example, at the Grand Prix or in Silverstone, I was in, because then you look at, I'm a little bit puzzled in my mind, very organized behind the wheel, but then outside a little bit more chaotic. And I dive into a lot of different things because I'm very interested and curious. So around Silverstone, I was all around plastic waste, and where does waste go? What do we do with it? And obviously then looking at the event, okay, how much waste is actually there? Like you have 150,000 people every day coming in and going out. They are consuming, they're drinking, they're eating, and what's the waste? So after the race, I went on the grandstand and helped the people that clean up the grandstands picking up waste and litter. And I was overwhelmed by the amount, and then I was sort of tracking what happens with it. Until recently, a couple of years ago, it went to landfill, which is horrible. Now at least it's getting brought down to London to get burned, and you can at least use the heat from that. But I think through that, really selfish, trying to understand what's the process, I inspired a lot of people and children that wrote letters and say that now parents, when they go for a walk, the little one, because she's a huge Formula One fan, she's starting to pick up litter just like I did, because it's bad for the world and bad for the planet. And it's very, very, maybe a very small example, but I think it's a very powerful experience because you feel like you're getting something back. So it's very pleasing to me, but as well, obviously, very important. So the idea is mostly, I would say, out of personal curiosity with the projects, but then also the pleasure of giving back, and obviously to try and spread or make people aware and inspire people.
And I mean, it's important to sort of put in context the different projects as well, because it's not about a B hotel in a Formula One racing circuit. I mean, it's easy to argue, well, I mean, what is that really going to do for biodiversity? But it's the fact that you've got hundreds of millions of people who are seeing nature in surprising places celebrated. Now, you'll be able to walk around today and you'll hear lots and lots of people talk around, bring nature on the board, make sure that nature has a seat at the table. And it's trying to find these different moments, these different opportunities to shine a light on something which people are taken by surprise by. So why is this here? So it raises, and it's that word that you keep using is that piques the curiosity. If we become a little bit more curious and we inspire others to become a bit more curious as well, to find out more, to dive in, even if that results in someone, picking up a piece of litter, or it could result in a conversation that leads to a bit more of a dramatic systemic change. I think that's what I felt like I enjoyed working on and seeing these V5 projects develop, is that it's there to try and get people a little bit more curious in a place where they weren't expecting to find curiosity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the bee buzzing corner that we did in Japan, and I was able to happily involve all the drivers, as you could see on the couple of images. We had so many questions. So where are the bees, and will we get honey? Well, the whole point was obviously using the bee, but as an ambassador, because it stands for so much more. It's not actually about the honeybee that we're trying to save or protect, because as humans we love honey, and we are farming a lot of honeybees, but it's really the wild bees and wild insects, all the pollinators that provide us with the food that we eat every day. And I think that's one of the without going off topic, but one of the fascinating bits to me as an amateur, looking into all these different fields, and then all of a sudden being able to string them back together, because it's one with the other. It's never one standalone. Yeah. And the idea, obviously, at an environment that is racing at the track, literally inside the track, was trying to find an idea or trying to find an action that involves everyone happily, and something joyful, but at the same time is something very useful. And speaking of biodiversity and biodiversity loss and decline, I think it's a very, very serious topic. And once people become aware, then they start to maybe look into it themselves.
Become more curious.
And exactly, become curious. And once you become curious, you start to care. Once you care, you probably start to act. And only then we can improve.
And it's the social element as well, right? Because I think that's the other bit which sport does bridge that gap. As people will know, I rank quite often that I worry that the environmental or the climate movement is becoming tremendously middle class and heading towards a sort of, if you can afford a Patagonia gilet, you're in the club. If you can't, then you're not. And what I want to try and look at is how can we bridge that gap so that we're involving a far broader demographic, a far broader socio-economic spectrum. And I think sport is an opportunity for that.
Sport,
as well.
And then I think in particular motorsport. I mean, I had lots of comments from fans or people inside, like, what are you trying to do? This is not us. This is not, shouldn't be you, sort of thing. And once you then talk to them and get into the why I am convinced or why do I care, people start to open up. And I think the audience in Formula One or racing is exactly one of these audience that we need, because it's not just inside here in this lovely venue. We all think alike, and let's agree on thinking alike. I think it's trying to involve everyone. And for most of the people, to be honest, most of the people that maybe they have different troubles, different problems. I'm very privileged. I mean, I found a passion early on that I really loved, and fulfilled me, and gifted me with a life that now I can afford to look at these kind of problems. Look at what might be wrong with the planet. But a lot of people don't have that luxury. They don't have the money. They don't have the privilege. So for them, it's a way different problem when they wake up and when they have to face the day. I had an experience. I was traveling in a van last year with my family. We were in France, and in that little hotel we were, there was a delivery van coming with two guys. And one of the guys went inside and did the delivery, and the other one was waiting outside, had a smoke, and the van was still running. So I walked over to him and I said, look, maybe it's a good idea to turn off the van, because there's no point having it run all the time. It's not good for the environment, blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me like, what?
Yeah. What the fuck are you?
What do you want from me? And, initially I was like, how can I? But then, what do I want from him? This is me with my thinking, and I might have a point, don't get me wrong, but he has different issues.
Absolutely.
His head is completely elsewhere. And, bit by bit, experience by experiences, I think you start to understand that, like you said, it's a social challenge as much as it is an environmental challenge.
Awesome. Well, look, Seb, we are fast out of time, and I've got 4 hours now where I'm going to read from my memoirs, which we're just going to lock the doors to make sure everyone stays here for that. But look, thank you so much for coming here today, sharing your story, being a part and parcel of this, being quite vulnerable in a space which, you don't usually associate F1 with Blue Earth Summit, but it's wonderful to have you here, and thank you very, very much for being a part and parcel.
Thank you for being here as well. And I think maybe to finish off, why am I here? I mean, I have lots of, we did a little bit in the past. I have lots of ideas of, what can be done inside the circuit or together with the community of Formula One, but also outside. And, I'm very happy to, and I haven't really figured out where I want to go in the future. But hoping to, through events like this and days like this, to get to know people and guidance, and maybe do something together in the future. Who knows? So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Let's go.